What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another hunting boot camp. So as duck season gets, it's getting closer and closer each day. So I figured now would be a good time to go over something that every duck hunter needs to know. Basic duck ID. So this isn't me going into detail on each characteristic of every bird. This is more of like just a general idea, how to distinguish between birds, kind of what to look for. I'm not going to go into like species specific detail per se, but more just general tips and tricks to help you differentiate between the species. So they preach it a bunch in hunting safety, and that is always be sure of your target. That is exactly the same with waterfowl hunting. There's a lot of birds that can be similar in appearance to ducks, but also you need to know the difference between the ducks for your regulations, how if you can shoot so many of what species, and it even breaks down into you can only shoot a certain number of this sex of this species. The only ones I know about it, but that is mallards. But still the point remains, you need to know what you're shooting at. That is kind of the general idea of this video, is to help you figure that out, or at least give you an idea of what to look for on that bird. So I just mentioned that you may encounter other birds in the marsh or wherever you're duck hunting that might appear duck-like. You might see some birds that come in similar to ducks. They fly in flocks, they floating on the water. There's plenty of birds that have similar behaviors to ducks. These include grebes, loons, cormorants, pelicans. These are all bird species you might encounter while you're out duck hunting, and they're all illegal to shoot. Cormorant might be open in one state. I believe they were talking about it. I don't know if that ever passed, but generally, all these birds, don't shoot them. Just look at the bills, and this is a lot easier to do once it's light out. That's why, a lot of guys, they say don't shoot until you can see that bird clearly. There's no harm in waiting a few minutes for it to lighten up a little bit more so you can see some of those other identifying characteristics that I'm going to talk about here in a few minutes. The reason I'm hitting on this is because it is very important. It's important to know what not to shoot, just as important as it is what you can't shoot. So those are the species you can't shoot. Some other species that you might encounter that aren't waterfowl include coots, rails, snipes. They're all game bird species, so it's good to know about those. And once again, you can tell from the beaks, particularly on the snipe and rail, they're really narrow and they got the long legs and stuff, but they can fly similar to ducks. They fly in flocks. Coots are very similar to ducks. Once again, there's no harm in waiting a few minutes to be able to differentiate between all those different species and know exactly what you're shooting at. Moving on, now we actually get to talk about duck ID. So this is just going to be a broad, very basic descriptions of what to look for. So these are just kind of characteristics that you can look for while that bird's in the air, while it's sitting on the water, things to pick out that might be able to help you differentiate between the bird species and give you an idea of what to look for in the future in this upcoming duck season. So the first thing to look at when you're trying to identify these birds is know where you're hunting. Know the habitat you're hunting. So, for example, if you're hunting a wetland or a marsh, generally you're going to run into dabbling ducks. Like your mallards, your widgeon, gadwall teal, shoveler, stuff like that. And if you're hunting big water, deep lakes, you're going to run into your divers, your canvasbacks, your redheads, bufflehead, golden eyes, scaup, birds of that nature. That's not to say that you can't find divers over in the wetlands and you can't find dabblers over in the big lakes. They show up anywhere. Sea ducks will show up in the middle of America. Rarely, but it does happen. So just knowing the area that you're hunting, that can kind of help you narrow down what that bird is not. The second thing to take note of when you're looking at birds in flight or on the water is what is the size of that bird. So in North America, the smallest duck we have is a green-winged teal. That is the smallest. And all the teal are going to be on the smaller side of the spectrum. The blue wing, the cinnamon, the green wing teal. They're all going to be on the small side. Compare that to the larger ducks in North America, your mallard, your canvasback. Those are going to be on the opposite side of the spectrum. Those are the biggest ducks in North America. All the other ducks fit in between. They're all in the middle of the spectrum. So if you see really small ducks, more than likely going to be your teal. If you see the big ducks, it's going to be your mallard, your canvasbacks. So size can play an important factor in determining what that bird is. The next thing, and it might be the most obvious one, is color. And I mean that in two ways. So the first thing is the plumage of the bird. And the plumage is basically just what color all the feathers on that bird are. You know, if it's late in the season, this is extremely easy to pick out. So the hens are going to be all drab, whereas the drakes are all going to be colorful, especially late in the season as they get their breeding plumage. And this can help you identify them super easy. So color in terms of plumage is very important. It can really help with identifying particularly the drakes of the species. And that is important too, because in a lot of states you can only shoot a certain amount of hens versus drakes for mallards. So, you know, look for the greenhead. You can like in Nebraska, you can shoot 5 mallards, only 2 of those can be hens. So you need to make sure you're shooting greenheads. In addition to the body plumage, the color of the duck's body, there's also the color of the speculum. And this holds true throughout all duck species. So the speculum is the little group of feathers on the wing that's really colorful on ducks, particularly dabblers. Divers, they'll have it. It's usually silver on them. Other duck species, the mallard, it's that violet blue iridescent color. Green wing, it's like an emerald green. Pintails, it's a darker green kind of. It varies by species. It's a great way to tell what that bird is in the early season or if it's a hen. And the reason I say early season is because male ducks in summer go through what they molt, and they go through what they call an eclipse phase. And that is when they get the same coloration of their feathers. They get basically they look just like hens. They'll look brown and drab, and that's so they can blend in until breeding season rolls around once again. But anyways, so the speculum doesn't change colors for the hens or the drakes. They'll have the same color speculum for each species. This is a very good way to be able to distinguish what species you're looking at, if it's flying or when you have it in your hand or if it's on the water. You look at the speculum, and each one varies a little bit from each bird. Some of them might be kind of similar, like blue wings and a shoveler's. They might be similar, but there are differences. And there's other differences in those birds that you can look at to distinguish between them as well. So moving on, the next one, you know, we've talked about size, we've talked about color, we've talked about where they're at. The next one is shape, and this refers to a bunch of different things. It could be bill shape, so you might have a duck that has a unique bill shape, you know, and this is something that can stick out even in low light conditions. If you see a duck with this bill shape, more than likely it's going to be that duck. So you got like the campsback with the triangular bill, you've got the shoveler with the spoon bill, you know, that's why they have the name spoon bill. It looks kind of spoon-like. Those are just 2 examples, but the bill shape can help you identify birds on the fly or on the water. In addition to bill shapes, you also have to look at the shape of the bird. So like pintails, for example, their necks will be really long. If you see a long-necked duck, more than likely it's going to be a pintail. But another way you can tell if it's a pintail is look at the shape of their tail. You know, they earn the name pintail from that tail. It's very long, it's very pointed. Even the hen and the drake will both have it, and that's where they get the name pintail. So look at the shape of the tail as well as the shape of the bill, the shape of the body overall. Other examples, you know, the wood duck, they have kind of a square-shaped tail. Also, one other thing to talk about with shape is look at the shape of that head. So, like wood ducks, they have a hood. It's almost like they have a mullet. So that's another way to determine what that bird is. So another thing to look for, well, listen for, is what sounds are that bird making. You know, sound is a very important thing, especially when you're hunting low light conditions. You know, shooting hours start a half hour before sunrise. A lot of waterfowlers hunt that time, so you know you might not be able to see that bird the best. And I keep hitting on this point because it's important. It might be making sounds that can help you identify exactly what it is. And just for an example here, and I might embarrass myself. Let's see. I'm gonna pull out the old duck whistle. Here we go. So different ducks make different whistles, quacks, stuff like that. Just for an example, I'll do like a mallard drake whistle, you know. So if you hear that, mallard drake. If you hear this, teal. We'll see if I can do this. That's supposed to be a pintail. Don't know how close I am. Let me know down in the comments if that sounds anywhere close to a pintail. But as you can see, ducks make a lot of different sounds, and not even just with their mouths. They also can make different sounds with their wings. A very good example of this is the goldeneye. If you've ever heard a goldeneye fly over, it makes a distinct sound that it's like a whistling sound. It's very unique. You can't confuse it with anything else. So sound is yet another important thing to help you identify these birds. There's a couple other things, but they're more advanced and you'll pick up on them as you go. So, you know, and these can be the wing beats. So ducks have different wing beats. You know, some fly faster, some fly slower. How they flock up, you know, balls of teal. The teal are notorious for just dropping in, buzzing in. Shovelers are the same way. Mallards and gadwall kind of loosely associated and drop in. And then divers are more the typical V pattern. But like I said, this is just a very, very basic waterfowl ID just to help you guys, give you an idea what to look for when you're out on the marsh. Thank you guys for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed this. If you have any other ways to identify waterfowl, just drop them down below in the comments. You know, hopefully other people who are getting new to the sport or still learning, they can read those and maybe learn some more stuff from you guys. You know, that's what I do these for, so we can teach other people. And, you know, I'm by no means an expert. If there's something I left out, drop it down below so other people can learn from you guys as well. But that's all I have for you guys today. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you like this video, give me a thumbs up. Go subscribe if you haven't already, and we will catch you next time, guys. See ya.